Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we make your tastes. That is exactly how it works. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong. With me, as always, Grace Leeder. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. I feel like there was so much to feast on this week. A lot of stuff returned and was on television, so I'm excited to chat about it with you, Taran.
Yes, and really, there's some news today, I think, to talk about in the world of TV and film, primarily TV for me this week. A couple of new shows that have dropped this week, and a couple of shows and movies to catch up on, perhaps. And then we'll talk about some of the upcoming shows and movies this week. Lots of this week's, lots of shows and movies, but the first and most exciting news for me this week. I was very excited when I saw this. The Pitt has been renewed for season 2.
This is good. This is good. This is great. I think nobody I've talked to who's watching The Pitt dislikes it. Everybody likes The Pitt, and it's coming back for more. This is great. Great news.
Yes, I agree. I think The Pitt is very fun. I don't know which size to use here. I really, really enjoyed I have been enjoying The Pitt. I've said it a bunch of times at this point, but like every single time it's on, I'm just like, yes, please. I'm just digging it. Just having a good time. Renewal for season 2 means that we're getting, hopefully another like 15 episode season. The conceit of the show is that it takes place during a 15-hour shift, and it's real time. I would assume that a season 2 would probably take place at another day. Not the next day, I would assume. That probably a few months or maybe even a couple of years after the events of season 1. So super pumped about that. I can't express enough how much I enjoy The Pitt. It's just I hesitate to call it fun, but I do have a lot of fun watching it.
No, it's really well done. It's like, I think there is a reason why I think that these like medical drama shows, like every once in a while, we obviously just do get one that sort of like breaks through. They they're just very resonant, I think. And this one in particular is quite good. With the added like little, thing of playing through the shift, like each episode being the different hour. So yeah, this is great. Very excited. Got renewed. I believe our colleague Mike Bloom interviewed Noah Wiley recently for Parades. You can go check that out. So yeah, it's very fun. I'm excited.
All right. Another big piece of news, I think that we both were interested in, that Mitch and Webb Look was a sketch comedy show back in 2006 by David Mitchell and Robert Webb. Classic. You probably, if you don't know the show already, you probably would know them from the Are We the Baddies sketch, where they like, we've got skulls on our hats. Do you think we're the baddies?
They're not, but they're realizing they're the bad guys. It's great.
Yes. Many other sketches, though. They have recently announced they're bringing it back. A new sketch show from Mitch and Webb. Super excited about it.
Me too. This is very exciting. We both watched Ludwig, David Mitchell's sort of puzzle detective show, which we both very much love. That show is hitting BritBox in March. So if you haven't figured out a way to watch it, if you're not in the UK, you get a chance to watch it. I recently got to interview David Mitchell. They'll come out pretty soon. And I was like, wow, they're really scheduling this interview very early before the show comes out. And it's probably because he's going to do a show with Robert Webb. I'm very excited for this to be returning. I really love these two. They're very fun.
Yes. They went to college together. They started this sketch comedy thing, got it made into a show. Have some very classic sketches. One of my favorite is the football. Football.
Yes.
All the time football. So highly recommend, honestly, just there's probably like some good YouTube videos of like some compilations somewhere, I would assume, but check it out. I'm excited for what they've got to come. I think they said 8 episodes for a season, and then probably see where it goes from there.
It was fun. They did this like I think when did it first starts in 2006, which is like in the middle of Peep Show, like as they're also doing Peep Show. So they're doing that and this Peep Show. I feel like kind of the most fun thing about Peep Show, other than the show is very fun, is that like Jesse Armstrong, this is like one of his first writing things, creator and writer of Severance. So it's very funny that like those like that came out of that, not necessarily out of that, but a writer goes on to do
You said
one of the most
Severance?
successful.
Do you mean
I
Succession?
meant Succession. I meant
Yes.
Succession, not Severance. Yeah, as shows, too many of them.
Yes, I believe. Yeah, I think so. They were originally that Mitch and Webb Sound. Well, I mean, not originally, but like they originally had like a radio show, audio sketch show, and that was in 2003 as well. So I think that the sketch comedy and the sketch comedy came first when they were in college, but then they also started up Peep Show at around the same time. Also, would very highly recommend Peep Show at the very least.
I believe just in terms of branding, I believe the Mitchell and Webb situation predates the Mitchell and Webb Sound, which predates the Mitchell and Webb Look, which is coming. So
yes,
they have good branding.
Listen, maybe the next one would be the Mitch and Webb Feel.
Yeah, what smell? Not great.
But yeah, Peep Show, fantastic show. Really, again, especially like the first, I would say probably 4 seasons or so. Phenomenal. You may have seen a GIF of David Mitchell dancing very frenetically from that show, and it's very, very funny. All right. Other news though, there's a couple of other things. Rings of Power was finally officially renewed for season 3.
You heard about the big news though of the renewal? Not just that it's coming back, Taran. Did you hear about that? You know what they're doing for season 3?
What are they doing?
Time jump. Which of course,
yes.
Which of course is very important for a show set in a fantasy medieval fictional world. That there's a time jump. I mean, it kind of is, but
yes, that's the thing about Rings of Power. It was adapting. I don't remember the length of, probably like 1,000 years of history, but they were trying to condense it all into one show. And somewhere along the line, I think clearly they've changed their minds, because I don't know if there's this time jump did not seem originally planned to me, but maybe it was. But to me, this seems like an opportunity for them to kind of do a soft reset, and do a little bit of a jump, maybe introduce a couple of new storylines and actors, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that this does feel like a pivot in terms of not trying to condense everything into basically one set period of time. Maybe we're not giving the show writers enough credit. I think that they always plan a time jump. It certainly does make sense in terms of the contents of the book that they're adapting, that like, we're creating the Rings of Power, and Sauron didn't do that in like the course of like 10 years, so I don't know. I doesn't really bother. It is very funny to think of like, it'll actually be 1304, whatever. No, I don't even know the dates of it.
I'm happy about a time jump personally. I think any kind of soft reset would be nice. I was enjoying Rings of Power, and I was enjoying season 2, but we did cover it, and I think by the end of it, we were both a little bit like, all right, this was.
Yeah, I think if I sort of summarize our thoughts about the show, is that it's a pretty good show, that the more you talk about it, the less good it is, the more that the seams become very apparent. And I think it's a show that has some of the most incredible moments I've seen on television in the past like 5 years, but everything leading between moment A to moment B feels not as good. So
feels like we're watching The Man Behind the Curtain. just moving the pieces into place.
I think I was talking with someone recently about The Wheel of Time, and how that's a show that's coming back next month, I believe, for season 3. And I think someone was just kind of like, finally got to the where they're like, yeah, I just think like this thing will never get finished, and I just have to be fine with whatever they keep doing, whatever they put out, and just sort of live with it, as like someone who's like huge Wheel of Time fan. And so like this is different because like this content from these, but like we've kind of seen the perfect version of the Lord of the Rings get adapted with the 3 movies that came out in the early 2000s. So this is slightly different. But the thing for me is like it does feel a little bit of a sham of like, if you're going to try to like take a big swing at something like this, that like there is the potential that like it just never gets finished. So I'm just kind of happy, I guess, that the Rings of Power got renewed, because at least like there's feels likely that they're like invested in this thing, and that they'll keep renewing it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like Wheel of Time is the opposite of Rings of Power in that the big moments kind of flop on the Wheel of Time.
That's fair, I think.
But all the rest I find phenomenal.
Yeah.
Some really, really great small moments throughout for me.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm more excited, I'm much more excited actually for Wheel of Time than I am Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I'm not as much of a big moments person in general, I think. Another piece of news: the Day of the Jackal has been acclaimed as the most watched original drama on Peacock. You might say, wow, look at Day of the Jackal. So much success. But then I thought, can I name any other original drama on Peacock?
I can't off the top of my head. I can't.
Hysteria, which got canceled.
Put Jess Sterling in the chat mentioning Poker Face, but I believe that would be billed as a comedy. It is pretty serious, like basically comedy drama, but it's probably in a different bucket than Day of the Jackal. I mean, the other thing about this is I wonder what this means. Peacock, I think I saw, we kind of were like, I think making fun of Peacock because I think a few months ago last year, they were like, we didn't lose as much money as we've been losing before. And we were like, that still sounds bad. But apparently Peacock is one of the streamers that's like closer to making money than that. Actually, a lot of the streamers actually are like pretty much like everything seems to be pointing to the thing of like they might actually like that they're all doing better than they were. So again, that's I know that sounds so general, but also like last summer they were coming off the Olympics, and so then if you think of like them keeping all the subscribers, it doesn't surprise me that then they would like, even I think regardless of whether or not there are a ton of other dramas on Peacock or not, that they were able to translate that into like having their most successful drama ever. That doesn't feel that surprising to me.
I mean, it makes me wonder if this is like the niche they will try to continue to expand on. We know that we've been talking about this sort of trend of spy thrillery kind of thing. We know that one of their other most popular shows is, of course, The Traitors, which is a reality show, reality competition show, but very heavily themed on like murder mystery. And so if that's doing really well, and shows like Day of the Jackal are doing really well, and they're still just trying to make a profit, I wonder if this is a direction that we'll see them, in at least in particular, continue to move in, but also just sort of like the television genre as a whole is moving in this spy thrillery direction.
Well, so Teacup got canceled, right? It recently got canceled. That's horror, obviously. Probably fits. So there are other ones that I would note as like other Peacock dramas are The Continental from the world of John Wick.
Right.
They had Queer as Folk that they rebooted a couple years ago that only lasted 1 season. The one that I think is probably surprising maybe that it beat, because I hear good things about it, even though I haven't really dabbled into it, is the Bel Air reboot. That's a Peacock original drama as well. So those would have been the ones that I would have like, if you're looking at Peacock dramas, those are there as things that this show beat out. Yeah, but disappointing the Teacup got, I don't think we talked about that when it got announced, but
it did. Like, I wasn't that disappointed because by the end of the season, I was kind of like not that interested in continuing anyway.
Yeah.
Although I do feel bad for Ivan Straczynski.
They have such an eclectic thing. The other one that they have is for those about to die, which is the Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that apparently is pending a renewal, so nothing official yet, but has not been actually canceled. Um, it's funny. It's interesting that their stuff is not more IP based. Actually, that's my thing for Peacock. Is that I guess because they're competing with like stuff that actually goes on NBC, because then they can air the repeats. But like in terms of Peacock originals, I'm surprised they actually don't like they were doing like Saved by the Bell and Queer as Folk and all. They had a MacGruber comedy, like that sort of stuff. I'm surprised their catalog isn't actually more of that, but alas. Yeah.
All right. Any other pieces of news, Grace?
Apparently they've officially cast Matt Damon as in the Odyssey. He's the guy who's the pronunciation of this I'm going to butcher. Odysseus would be the name in Christopher Nolan's Odyssey movie that's coming out. So Matt Damon is playing officially Odysseus, the titular character. So maybe a
Not
Matt
been
Damon
updated on
sort of
IMDb.
not on IMDb yet. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there was an image released, right?
Yeah. Of him in like a sort of gladiatorial mask. So I'm pretty excited about a Christopher Nolan another Christopher Nolan movie. This will be a long ways out, but kind of fun that he's just like doing the Odyssey. Does this intrigue you at all? Or are you like, that sounds so boring?
It does actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's there was a I might have talked about this already. There was a I think sci-fi original, or at least it aired on the Sci-Fi channel. Like a mini series. What was this?
Maybe that one from 2016, I think I saw.
Of the Odyssey. Maybe it was this. Who knows? Oh yeah, it definitely was. I recognize these faces that I watched. Yeah, Isabella Rossellini. And I watched this when I was like a little kid. I probably watched it when I was like 5 or 6. It aired in 1997, apparently. Or maybe it was later because it probably didn't originally air on Sci-Fi. But I loved it. I thought it was so fun. This like fantasy epic, and I think that Christopher Nolan tackling something like this with an all-star cast, I think will be very fun for me. I mean, Christopher Nolan doing something that I guess it's not like strictly what you would think of as fantasy, but it is. It's fantasy. Like it's it's mythology. It's like mythology-esque at least. But like I'm pumped.
The cast for this is just like extremely good. It's I guess like no doubt that like Christopher Nolan can get who he wants, but Tom Holland, Mia Goth, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Lupita Nyong'o, it's pretty stacked. So pretty fun.
There's like
John
literally
Leguizamo, Robert Pattinson, John
you
Bernthal.
can't scroll down until like
Betty
without
Safdie,
seeing
even
names you wouldn't recognize.
Yep. Should be fun.
Yeah, fun stuff. All right, new shows this week.
New shows.
I did not have a chance, unfortunately, to check out episode 1 of season 3 of The White Lotus, but I assume you did.
I did watch the episode 1 of The White Lotus. I like it a fair bit. I think that it's a lot of setup because it's a lot of characters. I wrote an article for Parade that hopefully will come out soon, ranking who I think is most likely to die. Same setup as the first 2 seasons. That one of the first scenes of the show is we know somebody will die, and then sort of every episode is a day at the resort in the week leading up to obviously the someone dying. I thought it was good. One thing that I think is very well done is that there's actually some stuff in here that I didn't see leaked or reported that came as a surprise to me in terms of like things in the episode. So that was kind of fun. There's at least one thing that I thought was like, I didn't see anything about that. So that's fun. I think that they do a really good job. I feel like it feels very familiar to return to in terms of, I think Mike White certainly gets drawn back to a few character tropes. I think there's like an extremely like, dickhead character that you'll meet. There's like a younger, sort of more innocent, like younger man trope. There's a lot of the like women in these in relationships that don't feel great. And I think that the aesthetic of it also is just like it's really, really strong. I like it. I think that it's too early to tell whether it's going to be as good as the other seasons, but I certainly think the elements are there for it to break out. There's already some hinting at stuff that feels, I think I said this last week, that Mike White has this way of like creating these like very weird, iconic, like instantly like what the hell am I watching type moments that I think he's already laid the foundation for. So I'm excited to keep track of White Lotus as we're going. Rob and Josh are gonna be recapping here on We Know Scripted TV each week, talking We Know White Lotus. So Jess has said that the theme song changed. I kind of like the Thailand vibe. I'm digging it. So
From memory, I couldn't tell you
last
what the
season
theme
was
song.
the vocally like, I'm hesitant to do it, but like more like vocal
I
chanting, mouth
The White Lotus
noise
is
vibe.
it is a very interesting show to me.
Mhm.
Anthology series, I think very famously struggle to maintain viewership across a long period of time. Um, I can't think of many that have managed to, like, season-long anthology. Maybe Fargo did a decent job, but even Fargo, like, really started to spin out by the end. You don't really hear about Fargo as, like, a mainstay in the same way
Last
that you
season of
do.
Fargo was incredible. Just saying. Just people should check it out.
But I
I
think
agree with
the
you.
storyline of season 5 of Fargo was like, is this a return to form? More so
Yeah, that's true.
like the latest, greatest, White Lotus season. So I'm curious to see how long the White Lotus can maintain its status in pop culture at this point,
The-
because I think that it has a very specific and unique formula that's working for it. And yeah, I was surprised that season 2 was able to, quite frankly, I think do even better than season 1 in terms of
but there's a
many things.
thing about season 2 that is connected to season 1, which I've already heard from people who is saying like you can feel the absence of Jennifer Coolidge in the show. Like it
Mhm.
doesn't have a Jennifer Coolidge in it. I think that like season 2 also had Aubrey Plaza, who there's sort of like, and I do feel like it's good, but there is a thing of like, oh, the show is coming back. It almost feels to me like, obviously Mike White pulled so much from Survivor, and but already there's things of like the way in which like the actual location of the show, and not just for not season 3, but of season 4, of it got renewed for season 4, and people being like, but where's it going to be? That feels so early Survivor to me, of like,
Yeah.
obviously like season 5 of the show goes to Thailand, like we're in Thailand this season. Like there's such that element of it, the murder mystery piece of it. I do think one of the things that's like toughest about the way he's doing the show is that there is then obviously a way in which he might get stuck in the theme. Not only is he playing in the same themes all the time of class and wealth, obviously like relationships, are because these people going on vacation with their partners, family dynamics, that sort of stuff, but he has to almost like reset them all each time rather than getting to build on what he did in the last season with his characters. So I kind of feel you that it'll be interesting to watch, to see if the White Lotus can kind of establish itself kind of with Succession being over. I do feel like whether or not Severance is it like what is kind of like holding the title belt of best show on TV right now. Kind of feels like maybe that was Shogun um for a little bit, but I don't think like you can say
For
that
2024,
definitively.
basically.
Yeah, and I wonder whether like there's so much uncertainty about that because it's coming back for another season, but like there isn't so much book content to do. So I feel like there is this really like interesting like sort of power vacuum in television right now in terms of like what could establish itself as like the best show on TV for an extended period of time. I think I'm even starting to hear some of the like people wondering about Severance and being like, is it as good as season 1? I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know if the White Lotus can do that. I think to your point, with necessarily with an anthology cast that's resetting itself as often as it has to do, but maybe.
I did check out the first couple episodes of Yellowjackets,
Okay.
season 3. You know, and it's it's Yellowjackets. I don't think
it is.
anybody is watching Yellowjackets at this point unless you really are. It just like fits for you. And I am probably one of the few people it doesn't fit for me, but I watched it specifically because I knew someone that was in the show.
Yes,
And
who does not appear to be in the show this season, unfortunately for you,
that's
Taran.
yeah. That
Sorry
was
to
I was
say.
like, well, if Nicole Maines isn't here anymore, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think last week we recorded, and our lovely editor Jess Sterling was unable to make it, and we did have a little bit of a convo about Yellowjackets, and now Jess is hearing, I think for the first time, your candid opinions about Yellowjackets, in which that you, I think, let me paraphrase for you, like it but don't love it. Is I think a little bit of how maybe you feel about Yellowjackets, that this is a show that is more fun than great. Like is like the best, in terms of talking about this, the best show on television. I do not think
Yeah,
that
it's
we're
just
talking.
like I
Yeah,
mean it's interesting to me because I think that it originally seemed to present itself as something that was a little more serious than what it was, and those initial expectation like misalignments uh caused me to feel like this I'm not really into this. Like to me this is just like it's the 100 or like one of those kinds of like shows that that like
this is
has
reacting in the chat. If I'll just read off some of the audacity. OMG, you're comparing it to a CW show.
I specifically didn't say CW. I said the 100 because I didn't want to be too disparaging. But yeah, it's a little bit like a CW show. Come on.
I do
Bit
think
more graphic.
I do think it fits in a category, I think, a bit above that, but I think I resonate with what you're saying, even if I love this show. And I actually think, like, in terms of like anybody, I think, sort of like balking at you being like, oh, that was gonna be super serious and then it was way more fun. I think it's actually what drew in a lot of people to the show, of feeling like there are a lot of these like mystery box shows that take themselves so seriously. I actually think I think Severance is the best show on TV in my opinion, like the best thing that's airing
Mm.
on TV. Severance, I think, also though does this. I think it blends this like it's pretty serious, in like the things that are happening are serious, and then there is so much like farce to
It's yeah, it's
the
really
show.
ridiculous, but it takes itself completely seriously.
Right. And Yellowjackets, I think, like, it was really interesting. I interviewed the cast leading up to the premiere. And one of the things I said to Christina Ricci is, in these first 2 episodes, she goes from having some of the more dramatic moments on the show that are she's still very funny within them, but it is much more about the seriousness of the situation, to in the next episode where something incredibly serious happens to her, but that feel to me is played for laughs, where she's like, she's sort of like, she's drugged by the daughter of her friend. And I feel like I talked to her about this, like, you do both in these shows. And she's like, I actually really don't love doing like, I don't think I'm that good at doing comedy, which I think is interesting, because I think that is, I think, the tonal core of this show, is
Mhm.
that there is I describe it as camp, not just because they're out in the wilderness in a camp, but that to me is like what really makes the show work for what it is, as opposed to, there are other shows like Severance. To me, I feel like I'm resonating so much more with, like, oh, we're cutting through the ridiculousness to get at like some of the most serious tones and themes of the show, like grief and, work, like all of this stuff, as opposed to Yellowjackets, that I'm so much more here for the, like, uh the tone of the show, in what it's presenting at surface value. But so I'm not opposed to the fact that you're like, I'm not, it's missing something for you specifically, Taran.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think those expectation misalignments again. Like, I think I was really interested in the show that did take itself seriously,
Right.
and so when I realized that it was like a show that is about sort of flashing back and forth and not really answering many questions and mostly just kind of focusing on like fun moments and like relationship like dramas, like I was like, oh, okay, it's just very different, than what I thought it was.
I
But
yeah.
I very much understand, I think, why people really do love it still, because it is, I think, unique to itself, especially in the current landscape. And even though it's like super my thing, like there's not really many other shows doing what Yellowjackets does.
I just recently went back and finished. I had started reading it, and then didn't quite get around to it, and came back to it. I finished reading the book The Listeners,
Mm,
which is the BBC show that we talked about, and I actually
mhm,
do think that that show and I've only still watched the first 2 episodes. I need to finish the show, and I meant to do it after I read the book, and then sort of fell off the book. I do think that those 2 shows, The Listeners and then Yellowjackets, they are talking about something that I think, like in terms of what I think is the core theme of the show, which I actually do find really interesting. That to me, there's moments where it is breaking through the campiness of the show, which is like what you believe and whether or not what you believe is actually what you believe, but what you then do with the things that people are believing in order for your own survival. And I think that the show so far with Yellowjackets does is doing an excellent job of that throughout season 2 so far. And just like a little bit of a sort of that Jess and I have watched a little bit of head to record the next podcast. I think it continues to do that in a way that actually I think is stronger than season 2 so far. I think that season 1 is clearly like stronger than season 2 of the show, but season 3 feels to like really be like honing in on the themes of the show in a way that I
mhm.
think is like more satisfying than what we were getting in season 2 so far. So
I think the show is at its best when it's really just like reveling in the idea of a a a group of people who have been sort of like who have evolved beyond like this whole concept of like, Lord of the Flies, like, trapped on
right,
an island,
right,
civilization breaks down, but then you return them to civilization and they don't really fit in civilization, and so they exist on a level that is like outside of that. And I think that's real. I do think that's fun. And I think when it leans into that, it's especially fun. And I think that's what it does best for me, at least. Those moments where it's just like, yeah, we're dealing with some random nonsense, but like, I don't actually care about this because because of what I've been through.
what I would say
And
is that
that's interesting.
I don't think that's what the show is going for, Taran. And that sounds like a really good idea for a show that you should write. Is like only ever dealing with like the immediate after effects of being out on an island and
I mean,
having to
I
like
think
figure
the
it out.
Melanie Linsky character in particular is very much. I think her character is the most that who is she's like a mother and a wife, and like she was occasionally just like I'm not going to function in the way that society expects me to because I'm actually better than that.
Well, I think it's more so about like having these like moments of trauma, I think, in terms of things that happened to you in your past and the ways in which like there was a freedom to that in terms of like not
Yeah,
being constrained by society's rules, and also the terrifying nature of like, oh, now I have to actually play by all your rules even when I don't want to. And it's actually the
right.
things that like the reasons why I was out in that situation that end up like coming back into play now. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting that they seem to have a plan for where they want to go with the show. And again, I think a lot happens in the first 2 episodes in a way that feels like they're really pushing momentum forward in season 3. So, yeah.
All right, Grace, I believe you saw Captain America:
Yeah,
Brave New World. I did not.
I did go see it, and people hate this movie. They hate it a lot. People, I keep seeing like worst Marvel movie, like a little bit of like Marvel's in this very interesting moment right now, Taryn, because they have, I think, 3 movies. Let's just like fact. There's like 3 or 4 superhero movies, not necessarily Marvel movies, coming out this year because there's also Superman. But they have Fantastic Four, and they have Thunderbolts coming out in a few weeks. Thunderbolts Asterix, which we probably should talk about at some point. Taryn, what does the Asterix mean in Thunderbolts? Are they going to rename the movie after the movie comes out? And is that a good or bad idea? Um, Captain America: Brave New World, I liked more than people seem to have liked it. The more I think about it, the less I like it. So purely from the moment I sat down to watch the movie with no expectations of this thing, other than that Harrison Ford was in it and he's playing a very specific character, and that this is like Sam Wilson's first time out as Captain America. And I am someone who watched and enjoyed what was it? Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was the television show.
Oh, you enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it. I did like it. I thought that the stuff that here's my big thing about this thing of Captain America is I feel like there's a story in the show, like kind of spoiled the shows, that they meet a character named Isaiah Bradley, who is a man who was like given the serum as a like that Captain America eventually gets as a black man, but then he's like imprisoned and tested upon. I thought was like stuff that Marvel had not really ever explored before, that I thought was like very, very compelling and interesting. And I thought it was like pretty progressive. The movie like toys with that a little bit, probably not well enough in a way that works, but this whole idea of like a black Captain America, just in the moment of it, I also thought it was working for me. I would agree that like this is a movie where I think like there's a lot of stuff in here that I like, and it probably doesn't make like a great movie, honestly. I know a lot of people don't like the CGI. They don't like that a lot of it got revealed about what actually happens, because if like the thing that everyone's seen in the trailers, I'm even hesitant to say now. We all know it, right? You know it. Am I spoiling it? Should I just say it?
It's in the trailer, no? Like
Harrison Ford is Red Hulk. Like,
yeah, like I also felt that way. Like I feel like I shouldn't know this.
Yeah. If they had have kept that secret, which I guess I don't know that they could or couldn't have done. I don't know. Whether they could have kept it a secret. They probably just should have never said it and just known that people would talk about it as if that's,
I mean,
probably
having not seen the movie, I feel like they shouldn't have it in the movie. I was interested in from my perspective. I saw the trailer. I saw like it's Harrison Ford, and it's like a political thriller type thing. And I was like, oh, this feels different than what Marvel usually does. And I've really liked the Captain America movies and how they do sometimes feel different. Sometimes they feel like spy thrillers. And so I'm interested in this. And then they had like another one with the Red Hulk in it, and I was like, oh, well, that seems boring now. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't know why they announced that this was happening, but they did, and it's in there. I do think there's an actor in here. Tim Blake Nelson is very good in this movie, who was not billed as a person who was going to be in this movie, and I really liked him in it. But
He's
yeah,
great.
people don't like this movie, so you can completely waive it. It will be probably on Disney Plus in like 3 weeks, because I think this is a movie that I think will have like, did we see what it did at the box office? If it even did okay, I think that drop off is going to be pretty tremendous. It did like $88 million. So, that feels
I
fine.
think I remember seeing that it was like, expectations were dropping. And so it's still doing okay, but like, it's not what it should be for the amount of budget that went into it. And okay, here's an article comparing it to other quote unquote flops from Marvel. The Marvels only made 46 million in the opening weekend compared to 88 Captain America, so it's doing much better than that. Eternals was 71, Ant-Man Quantumania was 106, Iron Man 2 128, Thor Dark World 85. So it's it's in the range. It's not like the worst ever performance by any means.
But it's also, I mean, obviously, like the budget isn't really the budget because it like has none of the marketing stuff in it, and the budget only gets released by Marvel. But apparently, the budget's 180, and it's made 192 worldwide. So like made its money, like not quite made its money back because like the marketing on it, but like these things still are fine and make money. And also, if you ever look into a video on like Hollywood budgeting and how stupid they are, and basically it should be illegal. That's another thing. But anyway, I just watch this movie when it comes out. You're probably not going to enjoy it. Now your expectations are low for the movie when you watch it, so it's fine. There's a couple like good things in here. I kind of feel like this is like the trend right now is like there are things in here that are good enough that they'll probably get taken and just put in the actual good stuff. So you kind of probably actually will end up having to. There might be nothing. No, there is probably some stuff that you like. You don't have to watch this movie. You actually don't have to watch this movie probably for anything else that's coming, because anything that happened in this movie, I'm thinking of like two things. They get said like in a sentence, and so like when the new movie comes out, just ask me and I'll tell you what they said.
I mean, here's the
You'll
thing.
be caught up.
I watched the Captain America show.
Yes,
Falcon,
Falcon and the
whatever it
Winter
was.
Soldier. Yeah.
Uh, Captain
Mm-hmm.
Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And I originally wanted to watch it because I was excited to watch it because it was like one of the first ones, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun."
Yeah. I
Then
think
I
it was
started to watch
third. I
it.
think it was after Loki. It was after WandaVision and Loki. So they were like on a pretty good run. So like,
Right.
yeah,
And I was pumped, like new Captain America. This is going to be
yeah,
a fun show. I started to watch it and immediately was bored and couldn't pay attention. So I stopped watching it, came back to it eventually, not excited to watch it, and watched it because I felt like I had to. Because at the time I was still watching everything Marvel because that was like rewarding at the time.
yeah.
And now you're talking about things from that show that I don't remember because I didn't pay enough attention to it, and I don't, quite frankly, remember really anything from that show. I have no idea what the plot
Okay,
was.
I will say I don't really remember a ton of what happens in Falcon and the Winter Soldier either. And I honestly do think the thing of being like, oh my god, I have to watch all this stuff to know what happens is a little bit overblown, because like in the movie they do there's like literally these scenes where like the stuff that matters from Falcon and the Winter. There's a scene where they're like, oh hey, you're that guy from that thing, and he's like, and you're this guy from that thing, and you're like, yep, and then they like do the stuff for the movie that matters. Like you really don't, I think, actually have to watch this. Like just very candidly,
All good.
you don't actually have to watch this. You don't want to. Yeah.
All right.
Can I do the
Anything
big
else
one?
new?
Yeah, the big thing that I think, I don't know, we don't really talk about Saturday Night Live on this podcast, but
Oh
Saturday Night
yeah.
Live had its 50th anniversary special on Sunday night,
Okay.
and I watched the whole thing. And I'm wondering, like, I was a big SNL person. I feel like everybody, like so many people I know, not everybody, so many people I know have this like thing of like when you're kind of like in high school and like you kind of fall in love with the cast who's on the show when you're in high school and maybe like university, and then you kind of like fall out of it, and then you're like, it's not as good as it used to be, and or you keep watching every week. I really wanted to go, and I was in New York the other night, but it ended up being like the Timothy Chalamet like hosting musical guest thing, and I just felt like I was gonna have to like wait outside forever, so I didn't want to do it. It's a dream of mine to go. I thought the special was very fun. I thought it was a little bit odd. I saw Mike Bloom tweet about this, that it was basically like they did all the greatest hits of the past 10 years with like 40 or 50 like years worth of people. So like instead of being like, here's a famous sketch from like 1990, the 90s cast, they would do like a thing that's pretty recent. Like, do you know Direct from Domingo? Taran, is that a thing in your world at all? This like, no, it's a new viral sketch that went viral a few weeks ago about like the bridesmaids singing for the bride and groom at the wedding, and the whole bit is about how she slept with a guy named Domingo, and he comes out and she has to hear it direct from Domingo, and Domingo, it's to Espresso, the Sabrina Carpenter song. So they did like a new version of that with a bunch of the cast. So like that was kind of how they did it. Overall, I thought it was very enjoyable, honestly, very funny at times. But I'm like a big SNL person, and I don't know. We've never talked about whether you are or are not, Taryn.
I was never an SNL person.
Right?
I don't think I've watched a single
No
episode of
way.
it.
You should
Yeah.
watch the 50th special. Except that it's 3 hours, and I won't make you watch 3 hours of.
I think like the thing
That.
I know about SNL the most is cowbell.
Okay,
Because that
gotta
was the
have
thing
more
on my cross
cowbell.
country team is that my coach loved that sketch, and so he loved cowbells.
I mean, that's what everybody has. I think like a thing that's like sticks out to them as like the thing that they know from SNL. So, they did get Eddie. They not only did they get Eddie Murphy back, they got Eddie Murphy to participate in not one but two sketches last night, which is kind of a big deal because he didn't do it for the 40th anniversary. Um, I thought if you're a big fan, this probably really worked. What was most fun to me was they did a bit. They do this sort of recurring segment a lot where like the host will do like take questions from the audience, and then someone will stand up and it's like one of the cast members being like, yeah, I'm just wondering like blah 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 blah. And they did that, but every time like another person would come, and they very clearly they called it out. Someone was like, this really just feels like you're doing the sketch to get all the people who are not in other sketches in the show. And like, no, that's not what we're doing. It feels very natural. And then they're like, isn't that right, Reverend Al Sharpton and Ray Romano? And they were like, yes, this is very natural. This feels great. But every time a celebrity, it would be like Fred Armisen or John Hamm or Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And then it would just be like behind them would be like Kevin Costner and like Charlize Theron. So like even within like it was just like very surreal. So I enjoyed it. I've seen a lot of like people on Twitter say like it's bad, but I think there's people who just like think SNL is not as good as it used to be. So, I had fun.
All right. Anything else?
The only other like new thing I did I watched all of the Oscar shorts, Taran. I saw a couple of them with friend Tate. If you're listening, shout out to Tate. So I watched 15 movies since we've last spoke. Let me start with the animated films. There's one that I really loved, Wander to Wonder, is about the like people who live on basically a Mr. Rogers neighborhood. Like, like how he has like the tree.
Yeah.
It's basically like they live on set and like and it's them. It's extremely strange.
This seems very sad.
Yes. Yes. I was gonna leave it, but yes.
I'm just reading the description.
It seems to be, it says they are left alone in the studio after the show's originator passes away. So yeah, it's very strange and weird and sad. It seems to be like everybody's favorite, but it feels to me too weird to win. So we'll see if that plays. It will probably be something. Last year I despised the one that won. So we'll see if that trend continues. In terms of the live action ones, I thought they were all pretty good. And they're sort of like a mix of they're all pretty political to some degree, or pretty funny. So we'll see. But I don't really have a ton of notes about the live action ones. I'm sort of rooting for Anuya, I think, which is pretty cute. But I think something more political will probably win. This was from India, and she's a 9-year-old girl who works in a factory. And someone that says it's funny. It's also like it is more serious, but it's pretty hopeful, I guess, compared to a lot of the other ones that are like really trying to stick home a point. And then if you really just want to be the most depressed you've ever been in your life, you should go watch all of the documentary shorts. And basically all the documentary shorts are either some of the saddest, hardest content you've ever had to watch in your life, or about children playing musical instruments. So those are the two themes of the documentary shorts this year. Literally, Death by Numbers is about a school shooter. I Am Ready Warren is about capital punishment, and Incident is about a police shooting in Chicago in 2018. And then Instruments of a Beating Heart is about these little Japanese girls
there's
trying
two
to play
about music.
There are. Instruments of a Beating Heart is about a little girl who's playing the cymbals in an Ode to Joy concert, and the only girl in the orchestra is about the first ever woman to be in the New York Philharmonic, and how she then teaches students, and she's about to retire. So if you want stuff about music or to be absolutely soul-crushingly sad, you should go check out the documentary shorts.
Which was your favorite?
I think Death by Numbers is probably the best one. I really did enjoy Instruments of a Beating Heart, but I don't think unfortunately it's just like not I think these documentaries, they really like to be like, this is what we're going, we're trying to make sort of a point and a statement. And this one is really it's really artistically well done, and it's a great documentary. So
I thought it had the best poster. So
Death by Numbers. Yeah. Quite sad. Those are all the new things I watched. I watched a lot of new stuff this week, Terry.
I didn't watch a ton, but I did watch a ton of one particular show. I watched all of School Spirits.
Okay, fun.
I just had it on. I mentioned this, I think, last week that I watched the first couple episodes and it was pretty decent. I will maintain that with the caveat of like, this is a show that maybe a little CWE, but very, very entertaining and very just like totally you can just put this on. However, I really thought at the end of season 1 that it ended very well. Okay. This is like a murder mystery. It's a whodunit kind of thing, and I thought that like throughout the whole time I had a theory. And I was pleasantly surprised by the reveal. And so I will say that I thought it was clever. Into season 2, it has been pretty good. But I think like the ending of season 1 kind of upped my expectations, and so it's not quite at that level, but still honestly good. And if it's your kind of thing, I think definitely worth checking out. It's one of the better versions of this that I've seen in a little while.
Okay, School Spirits.
I also watched a movie. It was not Anora.
Oh yeah, okay.
Instead, I watched Nickel Boys.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
But Anora maybe this week. Hopefully.
Okay, maybe. I'm almost done. I'm
Uh,
almost done my gauntlet. I got like 6 more movies to watch, and they're basically like all the song ones. So, but Nickel Boys. Tell me
yeah.
about Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys is, I think, a very good movie. But I did start like spacing out after a little while. It was like a little. So the premise of, or the sort of we talked about Nickel Boys a little bit.
The
It's shot in first
cinematography
person.
conceit. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. And that was very disorienting at first. I started to get used to it, and then like I think it just required a lot of like mental focus to stay not disoriented, and at some point I lost some of that focus.
Can I ask, did you watch
So
it in a theater or did you watch it at home?
I watched it at home, not in the I think it would have been better in a theater, for sure.
I do think I do think so too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's
So I
okay.
would
Not everyone
recommend
can
that.
watch movies that not everyone can especially like they need to completely fix like how we make sure that like if we want people to be interested in the Oscars as a thing and like take it seriously, we also have to make sure that people can watch all the films that get released. And so like that I like somehow that needs to be like fixed because it's so challenging to be able to see all of these.
Hmm. So I think there are pros and cons to that approach. I think overall, I'm glad it took the approach, even though it did disorient me at times. Mostly because I think, honestly, my favorite thing about the movie was just, again, like the little things, the little moments of focus on just like a random thing that happens, like a marble falling down the stairs, or like tying a string around your finger. Just like these little things that you just go through life, especially when you're younger, and that
Mhm.
you really like notice and focus on, that just like, maybe don't feel meaningful to you, but like just feel like, oh, like here's this weird thing that's happening. And there's just a wonder in sort of like the universe that exists in this movie, which is very interesting when you contrast it to the subject matter of the movie. And I think it really propels the sort of story and message even further because of that. Um, so I think it was very good. I do. It's another another one of these movies that 2 hours and 20 minutes. I wish it were maybe 20 minutes shorter. Personally, um, I think that would have helped maintain my sort of focus throughout with this perspective. I've seen some people say that they didn't like the gimmick, that they call a gimmick, of the first person. I liked it, even though there were pros and cons, and I think it was really beautifully shot. So I think it's worth checking out. I would suggest seeing it in theaters if you can, but it will likely not be for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I've talked about this a lot because we're like I'll have watched a movie, and so like I'll say I've watched it and I'll give sort of my thoughts, and then you watch it, and then we sort of both talk about it. And I keep feeling like I'm very fortunate again to like watch these movies in these very specific moments. So I saw this in an advanced screening in TIFF not at the festival, just at the local theater, where there was a Q&A with Ramel Ross right after the film. And like to me, that man is a genius. I thought that like so much of what he said also like stuck with me in terms of like it probably like I really did like it, not to like take it away for my enjoyment, but then getting to hear him talk about making the film, I felt like elevated it for me. And it's hard now then for me to like separate what I thought immediately after the movie from what I thought of watching the movie and then getting to hear Ramel Ross talk about it. So I think that like the thing of the first person's perspective that works so much for me is him talking about, there's a very similar thing, I think he even has talked about it, but in the movie Nope, there's a lot of talk about Black people in film and being filmed and being the subject of film, but trying to create in this movie a different sense of that, of really trying to like take back that sort of like getting to be sort of the the person who is like choosing what's on film, and so much of this is from their perspective and what they're seeing. I thought it works for me otherwise, but then to hear him talk about why he did that, like I think it's like just so worth going to check out if you're able to find Ramel Ross interviews of like hearing him chat, because I think it's so interesting. The other things that like I took away from this film is one thing I loved is I couldn't stop thinking about why certain things are in the film. So not only does it have the first person perspective, there's also these very like abstract moments where like you'll get sort of a sequence of things that are happening. And for me, the best example is like you often see like space imagery, like of like ships be going to space and things like that, and like why that was in there. And I've had conversations with people where like we kind of each will have this different idea about what it means or represents in a way that I think is like some of the most fun like discussion about film that I've had in a while. Of my view of that was like, wow, America's saying like, oh my god, look, we're like going to space, like one of the greatest like in like technological and scientific advancements in the history of our lifetimes happened. They were also putting Black boys in schools and like killing them and abusing them, and those two things happening at one time, while also this idea of like being trapped with the dichotomy of like we're going to space. Like there's just so much he's doing in this film that I think is like so worthy of like exploration thematically. I think the movie got nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. I think it has a strong chance to win Best Adapted Screenplay. It's sort of winning some of those awards. It won at the Satellite Awards and has been nominated a few times for that. So I'm excited. I really like Nickel Boys. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we talk about what's coming up?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, Grace. Suits LA.
Suits LA. Mm-hmm.
Suits LA. The show that it was this is this maybe one of the first shows that like for sure just like got greenlit because of like I think probably Netflix
resurgence?
just like Netflix resurgence.
You know what?
You know what? I say that, but like the very first original Netflix show with Kevin Spacey was based on a Netflix British show that did really well, but it wasn't a resurgence.
That feels different. There's actually I have like sort of like two examples, but I think they're very different than what's happening here. But in terms of a show that I feel like the story about this is a show that sort of like had its run that was like successful enough that obviously then like ended, and then after a period of time came back because of for some reason or the other. My like big example, which I think it like mostly doesn't fit as well, is like I think this happened to Family Guy. Family Guy got canceled after a little bit and then came back. Got brought back. But that's different though. I think Clone High is an example of a show that I think fits with what happened with Suits LA. But that was a show that show got canceled kind of like abruptly, and then there was like such a demand for it that years later it got sort of revived. That feels very different. I do feel like in terms of the specific thing right now of putting a show on Netflix that comes from somewhere else and then it having another life to it, and being like as popular as it is, this to me feels like the first time in a while. If people have other examples, I'd love to hear it, but I think this sort of feels distinctly unique.
Well, and like the thing to me is that like, and this is pure speculation, but I have to imagine that they don't even super care about it being a massive hit right now, right? Like, I think that what they've realized is that like a show like Suits does really well for a streaming service, especially just having the catalog. So let's just make more of it. And I'm seeing on the poster here, streaming on Peacock. So like,
this is because it's an NBC show. It's like going to be on NBC, not on Like, it's not a Netflix show. So then
Right. So
it's
they're like,
NBC
I
onto
mean,
Peacock. Yeah.
we were just talking about Peacock, like, are they going to lean into like the spy genre or whatever? But like, are they also interested in like putting a show like Suits, which is, like The Office or Friends, essentially, for what it's doing for streaming services? Uh, should we just make this show to have in our streaming catalog? Because it's not like I've seen a ton of like advertising personally for Suits LA. Like, oh, this is going to be the next
I
big thing.
I actually have seen a lot of advertising for
Wow.
Suits LA, but that I know agree with you that I don't. It's funny because they're not really promoting this show with like, and this person's in it. They are promoting it as in like Suits in LA. Like that is literally the extent of the advertising that is being done for the show, which tells you, I think, a lot. Like, I mean, they're on the biggest. They have Stephen Amell, who I like enough, but I don't think he's like, and there are, I think, the previous cast will be like in like the show, but not like the stars of the show, from what I understand. It's another one, Gilmore Girls. I feel like kind of got like it got rebooted because
Mm.
it had been popular on Netflix, I think, for a bit. But
Yeah, I just feel like it's never really worked out to revive something because of its popularity and then it be like a huge hit.
also Gilmore Girls came back with like the
4 episodes.
but the it was them. It was Lorelai and Roy. This is like
That's true.
just the premise of of Suits in LA. It's very interesting. I am extremely interested to see what this says. I believe Robin Chappelle will be talking about all of Suits LA here on RHAP. So
All right. Another big show coming, Zero Day.
Robbie, he was on SNL. He was on SNL the other night, probably in his
There you go.
greatest appearance on SNL ever. He tried to murder Debbie Downer. Does that sentence make any sense to you?
I mean, I know about the phrase Debbie Downer. Is that an SNL original?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think the origins of it, but the Debbie Downer is like it's a scene, and then she's like, and like a lot of white rhinos are in danger, and then it would like zoom in on her face with a sad trombone sound. That's Debbie Downer. Robert De Niro tried to kill her last night. So yeah.
Well, Robert De Niro is going to star in Zero Day. You'll never guess it. It's a conspiracy political
No,
thriller.
I'm excited for this. I don't know.
Oh
Robert De
yeah,
Niro
I
just
am
being on
too.
a
I
Netflix
mean,
drama. Okay, let's
yeah,
see.
I mean
Connie
the
Britton,
cast
Jesse
is
Plemons.
very good.
Yep.
Dan Stevens, Lizzie
A-
Kaplan, Robert De Niro, Jesse Plemons, Connie
Angela
Britton,
Bassett.
Angela Bassett.
Yeah.
Um, it's where is this? Is Netflix?
Netflix. So it's all gonna
New
drop.
Netflix show. So,
Yeah.
uh, hopefully it's good. It's certainly attracted a lot of talent here. So, we'll see.
This is a really I feel like this feels to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, pretty new in the Netflix television sphere. Really correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like I must be wrong. That just putting look at the poster. If you're watching on it's just
It's
Robert De Niro, and it says Zero Day on it, and that's basically it. American flag dripping on his with the little American pin and the Netflix logo. Like this feels like what they do with movies. Like this is like, here's Kevin Hart, here's Chris Evans, here's whoever. Here's
Well,
whoever
Kevin Hart is a good example because I have seen Kevin Hart's face on a poster before for probably a Netflix show.
for a Netflix show. I feel like yeah,
Maybe.
probably. No, I feel like they put them in a lot of they do this for the movies. I feel like they're like, here's this big show, but for like a long run television show, I think it's very interesting. Do we know anything about the creator Eric Newman? Has he done it? Let's see if he's done anything else. That would be my.
I mean, it's not every day you get
Griselda. Okay, and Narcos.
Robert De Niro.
So the creator, yeah, he did. Okay, he's like in the Netflix camp here. He's done Narcos Mexico, True
Narcos, yeah.
Story. He literally did a Kevin Hart television show on Netflix. So you're right. You were right. Griselda he produced. So this makes sense. This is how this happened. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, listen, the credits here on the creators are not exactly like super stellar. I mean, obviously Narcos is pretty good, but
no, but I think it more makes sense to me in terms of like, how did this happen that they're just like got Robert De Niro to do this like television show, which is it's on Netflix because it's like with these people who do a bunch of Netflix shows and they just paid them a bunch of money to be on it. So Yeah. The other show that's coming back, Taran, I believe this week is Reacher, which is apparently incredibly popular, and I have never really watched it. So
I watched it a few episodes of season 1. It was just like, this is just not for me. It's basically just like Alan Ritchson, who's by all accounts great guy, very happy for his success. But just him being a beast and just like it's I think probably the best way to describe the show Reacher, from my understanding, is like it is the embodiment of what a lot of men usually fantasize themselves to be in situations. Like, oh man, I really wish I could stand up for this person right here. This photo, there's a boy who looks sad. He's probably going to help that boy and beat up some bully. Like, that's just kind of like what the show is in general. Like, him being able to use force to like be a good guy and stand up for people and really make you feel like, oh yeah, oh yeah, that makes me feel like, oh, get him, Reacher, yeah.
yeah, apparently this was the #1 streamed show when it came out last year. I think this is season 3 that's coming out. So season 2, it was the #1 streamed
Season
show
3, yeah.
the week that it came out. So this is just an incredibly popular show. Which is impressive because also it's not on Netflix. Also, just to say, that's impressive. It's on Amazon Prime. So makes sense also as an Amazon Prime property where they're like, watch the show and then probably you'll get advertised to buy all the books. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Couple of other ones. There's a show called 1,000 Blows. Is this right? Yeah, which is coming out with its first season. I don't know why it says 2024 if it's already got a season. But it's a Hulu show. From the creator of Peaky Blinders, 1,000 Blows.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy next to him
you
in
can
the poster is he was in Peaky Blinders for a bit.
Yes, Stephen Graham. He's been in a lot of those like period shows. He's very good at it. He played what's his name in Boardwalk. Geez. Oh, he's also in Line of Duty, of course. But what was that show? The Boardwalk Empire. He played Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire. That's what I remember him from.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you can immediately tell, like, from the poster, like the style feels very Peaky Blinders. So I expect it to look cool and feel cool, and maybe it'll be good.
Okay, we'll see. 1,000 Blows.
And then movie, The Monkey.
The Monkey.
From Osgood Perkins.
Yeah, I'm excited for this.
Yes, Osgood Perkins, who has previously made Long Legs. So he's coming off of his Long Legs success to do The Monkey, which is based on a Stephen King property?
Short story.
Short story. So it could be fun.
This feels like it has some upside. Theo James, he was in, I believe, last season of The White Lotus. And he's
splatter horror is one of the genres.
Splatter horror. Oh my god.
Elijah Wood is in this.
Adam Scott is in this, I think. I think I'm right. And Elijah
He's not on the front page of this, but
I believe that's true. Anyway, we'll see. I'm excited for The Monkey. Yeah, good little horror movie in late February. I'll take it. The movies have been a little thin recently. I haven't seen. There was something else that came out last week that I meant to go. Oh, I want to see Paddington Peru, and I didn't get a chance to see it.
Oh yes,
try to check out that because I like the Paddington movies. Yeah,
Paddington really had like a moment.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went away. Speaking of CW shows. There is a show called Good Cop, Bad Cop with Clancy Brown, which is apparently going to be on the CW. It's a comedy. Siblings who are police detectives.
There's a very famous, like, sort of like cult Canadian movie called Bon Cop, Bad Cop. That's all I can think about when I saw Good Cop, Bad Cop. This Bon Cop, Bad Cop, which of course, Good Cop, Bad Cop in French. But yeah, I like Clancy Brown. I like him.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
That's all right. Anything else, Grace?
Good Cop, Bad Cop. No, nothing else. We talked about a lot this week. There's a lot of TV on right now. Yeah.
Yep. That is what we are here for. And that is what we have for you this week. We'll be back next week to talk through all of these new shows, or at least some of them, the ones that stand out to us, with more news and perhaps more movies and shows that have been watched by me and or Grace. And we will talk about those things and then make tastes. That's how we create tastes.
Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Experiences. Yeah. So make sure you're subscribed to the We Know Scripted TV feed. You can also find us over on YouTube if you want to see the visuals that we have for you, which I think are pretty helpful when we're talking about all these things. You get a little glimpse, little visual cue of what it is. And that's about it. Check out all the other stuff we got going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of weekly recaps right now because in addition to the doctors and Josh chatting Severance each week, Jess and I are chatting Yellowjackets, and then Rob and Josh are chatting The White Lotus, recapping that each week. There's a lot of weekly coverage happening right now, and you want to make sure you're subscribed for that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the Showtime Paramount show, Yellowjackets, as Jess says in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us this week on the Tastemakers, and we will see all of you next time.